When you go to the doctor's office, what do? You tell them what has been bothering you. From this, the doctor can both assess your emotional and physical state. However, what would happen if your doctor didn't speak the same language as you? You'd be stuck, unable to fully communicate your situation. Now let's say they bring in an interpreter, but you can't see the doctor or the interpreter. Your physical needs might be addressed, but a huge chunk of the puzzle has just gone missing. In order to create a full profile on you, a medical professional must know both your physical and psychological condition. Without the psychological aspects of your health, some of the physiological aspects cannot be fully taken care of. Psychology is the study of the mind and behavior. There are so many areas of psychology, it would be difficult to list them all. However, some of these areas include developmental, educational, and cognitive. Psychology has been a tool used for many years to better assess the condition of patients. Now, physiology is the study of the body. All the biological processes and how they are carried out are studied. Physiology is mostly used in the medical field, and therefore, a lot of people who study physiology in college end up becoming doctors. These two fields are compatible because the mind and behavior are directly influenced by the functions of the body and vice versa. So, when you combine the two, they are useful in solving problems such as a language barrier. When a language barrier occurs, often a doctor can have a hard time assessing a patient, and then patient care can suffer, and thus emotional health suffers. In the book Social Science and Medicine by Peter Salmon and George M. Hall, they discuss their findings related to patient care and psychology. When the patient had their psychological condition taken care of, their physical health improved drastically. Therefore, if we wish to understand the physiological issues, we must also take into account the psychological ones. One study, also found in the book Social Science and Medicine, revealed that the use of interpreters created a more trusting environment for patients, and therefore they felt more comfortable describing what ailed them. This led to more referrals and the proper attention. The study indicates that when a patient feels understood, they are able to open up to their doctor. Therefore, by combining these two studies, we can confirm indeed that being understood and being mentally taken care of affects the physical health of patients. And since the goal of a doctor is to make sure the physiological processes are running smoothly, they must attend to the mental needs as well. Now, some people may struggle with the idea of communicating without words, but we do this every day. You communicate with your facial expressions, your body language, and for some, even music can serve as an unspoken conversation. So although we may not know it, we are constantly talking, just not necessarily with our mouths. So, how does one go about assessing the psychological condition of someone without using words? Psychology has uncovered several tools which can be applied universally. Such tools include things like facial expressions and body language. The discovery of the 7 universal facial expressions proves we all share similar traits. The researchers who spearheaded this study were Paul Ekman and Carol E. Izard. The studies they conducted were later referred to as the universality studies. Ekman, a co-discoverer of microexpressions, is a psychologist who focuses on nonverbal behavior such as facial expressions. Izard focuses on emotional development and is a professor at the University of Delaware. Body language is another key factor that can be helpful in determining the psychological state of someone. It is quite useful because it is constantly communicating the feelings of that person. A person who has a more open stance and faces who they are addressing is most likely happier and comfortable. However, a person who has their arms crossed and is not facing the person they are talking to is most likely unhappy and not comfortable in the environment. In order to better understand their patients, doctors can take hints from simple body language. In addition to this, doctors can also work on setting their patients at ease with their own body language. Research on whole body communication is scarce, but some research has been conducted to see how good people are at reading another's emotions based on certain cues. One study found that the combination of body language, facial expressions, and emotional voices was the most useful, yet almost every person was able to accurately determine the emotional state of someone with just 2 of the components. This study shows that while it can be difficult to tell someone's psychological state without the use of language, it is not impossible. As members of the human race, we have all been conditioned to assess the emotions of others without necessarily speaking to them. This simple tool, used in everyday life, can be absolutely essential when a doctor is dealing with patients. Another aspect to consider is the differences between patients who speak different languages. For example, after a study was conducted on both English speakers and Chinese speakers, they discovered that areas of the brain used for nouns and verbs was different depending on which language the patient spoke. English speakers use the prefrontal cortex, while the Chinese seem to use various overlapping areas of the brain. Psychology is an incredibly useful tool because it not only shows us what we all have in common, but it shows us the differences, such as language processing. Only when we can take into account the similarities and differences can we fully understand another person. This understanding is essential for doctors if they wish to evaluate a patient's psychological and physiological needs. By using the tools we have, such as facial expressions, body language, and a knowledge of differences that can be caused by culture or language, doctors can better take care of their patients. It may seem like a daunting task, but it is a difficulty which needs to be addressed both in everyday life and the medical field. When working with other people, it is essential that we focus on understanding the other person before we can make ourselves understood. This is especially true of doctors because in order to take care of their patients, they must understand how they are feeling and what they need. Then, after, the doctors can give their advice and make sure the patient understands them. Encountering a language barrier is always difficult when one is trying to take care of the emotional and physical needs of a patient. However, equipped with the knowledge of some basic principles of psychology, the task is made a bit simpler. Psychology and physiology have and will always be linked together, which is why they make a perfect team to deal with language barriers.